Everybody, welcome to my channel, Be Free Now with Maria. My professional background is in psychotherapy, and I created this channel with the hopes of helping you experience some form of emotional freedom. This channel is not designed to give you psychological advice, but rather to help expand your perception by helping you become aware of your beliefs, thoughts, and feelings. The mind is fascinating, and through psychology, we're able to make connections, become more self-aware, reprocess trauma, and change old patterns. This is helpful stuff. However, I believe that there's a spiritual element to life, and that when we leave this part out of the equation, we are left spinning our wheels. And when we incorporate a divine belief, a deeper shift happens. Therefore, I like to process life with a cognitive awareness and a spiritual perspective. With that said, today I want to ask the question, actually, not ask the question. I'm getting a little confused in my own head here. Not ask the question, but rather ask, have you ever started a statement by saying, I don't want them to think, right? I don't want them to think ... whatever it is. Now, when we start a statement with, I don't want them to think, we start to feel anxious because we feel this need to control, right? Because if I don't want them to think, I need to control what they're going to think. And if I'm in a controlling mode, now I'm feeling anxious because I have to put myself in a position now that is outside of my comfort zone so that you don't think something, right? And that's what we all do, right? We don't want them to think. So now we have to manipulate, control, and try to manage and handle the situation so that they don't think X, Y, and Z. But the reality is that people are going to think what they're going to think anyway, regardless. And the reason for it is because everyone sees life through their own lens. And so 5 people can listen to the same message and get a different meaning from it. So what someone's going to think, we can't control even if we try, because people think the way they think, and they think based on their experiences and the way they see life. And that's what they apply to what you say and so forth, and what you do. So there's really nothing that you can really do to control. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't show up with kindness, right? Or be helpful. And people will perceive that as, oh, so nice. Or at least generally speaking, they do. But that, aside, how people perceive what you say, that's gonna vary. And it's not necessarily based on you saying something negative or positive. It's really based on where they're at in that particular moment. Sometimes you can say something without even thinking anything negative, and somebody who's not in good space may perceive it as something negative. So we don't really have any control. And when we try to control and we start out with that thought, right, I don't want them to think, we're setting ourselves up for stress, anxiety, and the possibility of a negative interaction or fear that will hold you back, and so forth, right? So yucky feelings and yucky experiences are possible. And the other thing that can happen is resentment, because in the process of trying to control and trying to manage things so that they're not thinking bad about you, you're going to now take yourself out of your comfort zone, not honor your own needs, and do things in a certain way so that they can think nicely of you or not think bad about something that you've done, that you did or said, or so forth. And you're going to start feeling resentful because you're not really honoring yourself. You're doing what you think you need to do so that they don't think X, Y, and Z. And you're going to wear yourself out, right? And you're going to frustrate yourself. And then that opens up the doors for acting out, lashing out, saying things that can interrupt, a positive communication, and so forth. So we want to be mindful, right, of how we're starting our statements and making sure that we're trying to avoid starting out our statements with, I don't want them to think, because we're opening up the door to something that isn't going to feel good to us. So instead, what we might want to say to ourselves is, what other people think about me is none of my business. That's the title of a book, by the way, but I love the title because it could be used, right, as an affirmation. What other people think about me is none of my business. I read this book years ago. It's by Terry McMillan, I believe. But I'm not sure if I got the author's name right, but I definitely have the title right. And it's a great read if you want to. But the title in itself, it's very powerful, right? What other people think about me is none of my business. And it's powerful because it empowers you, right? When you're thinking, what other people think about me is none of my business, then something happens, which is you get to just be who you want to be, because you're not thinking about, oh, what are they thinking? right? Your focus has completely shifted back to you as opposed to them. And you have control over yourself, right? What you're going to think and what you're going to do and so forth. Or at least you could, right, become more aware of what you're thinking and doing and set some focused, action. But you definitely, like I said, don't have control over other people. So, right, when you say to yourself, what other people think about me is none of my business, you're intentionally shifting from what they're thinking to what matters in that moment to you. And I don't mean this from a selfish perspective, right? When I say what matters to you and forget about them, but there's an unhealthy quality to focusing, right, on what other people are going to think about you versus separating from it and saying, look, that's none of my business, right? And understanding that you have no control over that. That's none of my business. The only thing that really matters, right, is what you think about yourself, because that's ultimately what's going to guide how you feel and then how you act, meaning how you show up to the world, right? And what you say yes to and so forth, and what you dare to do and what opportunities you walk towards, rather walk away from because of the thought, oh, I don't want them to think, and then hold yourself back, right? So that's something that you can say to yourself. And also you may want to anchor yourself in a divine knowing, right? And getting to know that divine part of yourself, because your divine self is there and it needs to be acknowledged and it needs to be honored, because when you integrate it into your psyche, it's already there anyway, whether we integrate it or not. But when we consciously integrate it and connect with that divine part of ourselves, something happens, which is that we start to see ourselves differently, right? And when we see ourselves differently, then we worry less, and we're more I get stuck in my words there. The greater the chance that we're not going to say to ourselves, right, oh, I don't want them to think. We're going to more than likely shift from that because we're grounded, right, in our knowing our divine self, right? That part, that divine part that lives and breathes to us. We're connecting with that. And so then we're feeling better about ourselves and not thinking of ourselves as these small, limited beings. Instead, we're seeing ourselves more whole, more complete, because we're connecting to that part of us that's there at all times. So like I said, whether we're connecting to it or not. So that's another powerful exercise as well. So before I end, I want to pick a word from my bag of words and see what else I'm inspired to share with you today. So let's see, what do we have? Well, thought it was blank for a minute. Ooh, doubt. Perfect. Now this is interesting, right? Because doubt is something that we feel when we think, I don't want them to think. We are doubting ourselves. We are doubting how great we are, how amazing we are, and what good people we are, and so forth, right? In some way, we are doubting ourselves, and therefore we want to have people think something about us, and we try to control that, and then send ourselves down a rabbit hole that leaves us nowhere fast, right? So we want to shift from doubt, and we want to go into trust, self-trust, self-love, right? So when we ground ourselves in that knowing, right, that there's a greater essence, right, that is a part of us, a divine a knowing and connection within ourselves, right? When we're connected with that belief, then we're not doubting ourselves. We're feeling more confident. We trust, right, that is in divine order, that we're moving in the direction that we want to move in, and so forth, and many other positive things that we start to connect with, because we're not doubting ourselves. We're connecting with a higher self. We're connecting with peace when we do that, a peace within ourselves. And when we do that, we're shifting from, I don't want them to think. Okay? So I hope that helps and that it prospers you in some way. Have a beautiful day now.